Legends, welcome back to another Ruck Infringement Podcast team preview. This week, we're talking the Canberra Raiders. And to join me, the one and only Craig Glover, awesome friend of the show. Mate, we miss you. How you been?
Good, mate. I can't believe it's been this long, but yeah, keen to be back on.
Yes, mate, it's a pleasure to have you. Of course, you've just finished a 36-hour challenge with the Terry Campese Foundation. Do you want to take us through a little bit of that and then give a shout out to the great man?
It was hard. It was the Terry Campese Foundation, which is a charity organisation raising money for youth programs, mentoring teenagers coming through. Building a brighter future is what it's all about. And 30 of us completed the Special Forces Military Challenge, which we raised money for those programs. And as part of that was, 30 plus hours out in the bush. We were blindfolded, and it was a very hard 30 hours with very little downtime. Before I hopped onto this one tonight, I was still soaking my feet in the bath salts as my toenails start to come off, and that's 2 weeks later. But nearly $700,000 raised. It's just a true testament to everyone involved and the man himself, Terry. So he's got a heart of gold, and people build off that and filter off it. And I was just so appreciative to be part of it.
Mate, that's fantastic. I watched a bit of the live stream, as I was saying to you off air, and it takes a braver man than me to do that. So congratulations to you. Congratulations to the Terry Campese Foundation. But what we came here for tonight, mate, the Canberra Raiders team preview. Now, I'm going to start with the ins and outs for 2025. There are a few of them, so sit back, get comfy. If you're listening at home, grab yourself a coffee. So the 2025 games, we start with Miles Martin from the Newcastle Knights, Matty Nicholson from the Warrington Wolves, Owen Paddy, Ethan Sanders from the Parramatta Eels, Savelio Tamale from the St George Illawarra Dragons. And if we move over to the 2025 losses, Nick Kodrick has gone to the Dragons, Catalans Dragons, Emre Gula to the Dragons, St George Illawarra, Peter Holler to the North Devils, Hohepa Puru to the Cronulla Sharks, Jordan Rapiner to Hull FC, James Schiller to the Newcastle Knights, Elliot Whitehead to the Catalans Dragons, and Zach Walford to the Huddersfield Giants. Now, mate, those losses, it's a lot of talent there. Elliot Whitehead, a big one. Jordan Rapiner, a big one. Do you think the gains outweigh the losses? I think the losses are probably their worst.
A lot of experience, and 12 months after the departure of Jack Whiten, that's a lot. So yes, optimistic for Canberra. They're my second team, as you know.
Yeah.
But big concern about the season ahead.
Yeah, absolutely, mate. Let's jump into predicted lineups for probably round one and how most of their season will go. Now, it's really hard with this team because Ricky Stewart likes to experiment, and he likes to experiment for 27 rounds. No one to save in the Canberra Raiders. But I think if we start off with the fullback, Ko Weeks did a really good job the back end of last year. I think he will keep the spot there to start the season, you reckon?
I think so. Obviously, you got Savage floating around, but he'll either have the 2 or 5 on his back, I think.
Yeah, absolutely. If we move into the wingers, as you said, I've got Xavier Savage. I've got young Tamale, who we just named there, came over from the Dragons. Looked really good in the trials. I think he actually may get the other wing spot. Ricky Stewart is very high on Albert Hopewadi as well, but I think Tamale may actually get the first crack, which will be really good. Really good young kid, really quick as well. So it'll be really interesting there. I don't think there's anyone really else to come in on that wing.
I don't think so. I think Hopewadi might start just for the experience, but he'll have to perform. Interesting to see.
Yeah, absolutely. We jump into the centres, of course. Timoko, he's been doing it for a few years now, and your good mate Seb Chris, I've got to have him there as well. I think, what we've seen over the past couple of seasons, those two have worked really well together and with their halves as well. So I think they will be the 3 and the 4. The good thing the Raiders have is depth. There is a lot of players coming through the system, which is great to see. A couple of young centres that may debut, not too sure yet, but we'll keep an eye on what happens there. But, mate, I think Tim McGuire and Chris have that locked up.
And absolutely love watching Seb play. As you know, coached him when he was 14 and 15, and it's great to see him continue his career in the NRL.
Yeah,
nothing
absolutely.
to do with me, by the way.
Oh, mate, we're moving to the halves, and of course we've got Ethan Strange, the 6, And the 7 will be an interesting one because Jamal Fogarty, of course, he'll be there if he's fit. But if he is injured, there's a few options going around. Even Sanders, I thought, played really well in the trials. Adam Cook had a bit of a run there last year as well. So there's definitely options in the 7, but I think Fogarty and Strange will be the starters there. If we move forward to the front row, now the front row is interesting because Gula, of course, a bench forward, he's not there anymore. But if we start with the front row, we got Joseph Tarpany and then Josh Papali'i. And I think this could be Papa's last season or next season will be anyway. I think he's coming towards the end of his career. But the 9 is the interesting spot for me. We've seen over the past few years they've experimented with Denny Levi, Tom Starling, and then this year come onto the scene is a young bloke, Owen Paddy. Now, I don't know if you watched the first trial against the Sharks. Owen Paddy scored 2 tries coming off the bench, and he looked really, really good. Mate, do you think he can get a crack, or do you think they'll go with a Starling or a Levi?
I think they'll start with either a Starling or a Levi, again, just down to the experience. But from what you've seen in the trials, I was surprised that Zach Wolford wasn't re-signed to stay. I thought he had a pretty good year, somebody coming off the bench in a few good games. But I think that's obviously down to what they see in Paddy. So I think he'll get his crack, but it won't be at the start of the year.
Yeah, absolutely. Mate, we move into the second row now. Of course, this will be a big mover here with no Elliot Whitehead. The number 11 speaks for itself. Hudson Young, he'll be there. Former Origin player, probably gets the Origin spot back this year. And look, he's a fantastic player. Can find a try line from anywhere. But the number 12 spot is interesting. They've got Matty Nicholson, who's come over from the Super League, who's a really good talent, but also Corey Horsburgh, who apparently has been training the house down and looks really, really fit at the moment. And Ricky's actually come out and said that Horsburgh's looking good. And for Ricky to actually speak about Horsburgh in a positive light was something a bit different because last season Horsburgh was nowhere to be found. But I wouldn't be surprised if we see Matt Nicholson start or a Horsburgh. Zach Hosking, of course, has an injury and he's racing the clock to be fit for round 1. So if he is fit, I think Hosking will get the spot. But, mate, any thoughts on Horsburgh at the moment?
I think Big Red will start. I think he'll have a great season and he'll be back in the Origin arena this year.
Look at that. Beautiful. For you Raiders fans out there, there's some positive experience. I mean, not for us New South Wales fans. We don't want to see Big Red running at us. And then, of course, to finish off is the lock position. Now, the lock, it's another interesting one because, Tarpany can play a bit there too. I think he'll play in the front row. The lock position for me, I think they're going to try and experiment a little bit. We saw Morgan Smithies play there last year, and I think he was good without being great. I think obviously he'll get the first crack, but as I said, Matty Nicholson, he can also play lock as well. So there's lots of spots up for grabs. There's lots of talent there. Mate, if we move into a bit of the bench makeup, I think, as we said, if they start with Starling, I think Levi's on the bench. If they start with Levi, I think Starling's on the bench. Ricky tends to go with your 2-hooker rotation. I think we'll obviously throw Matty Nicholson in there if he's not starting. Same with Corey Horsburgh. If he doesn't start, he'll be on the bench somewhere. But really, apart from that, their bench is actually probably a bit wide on compared to previous seasons. They've lost Emre Gula. They've lost some of those bigger forwards. Mate, are you a bit worried about their bench?
I am. The depth is the concern, especially with the forwards. I think they've got a lot of young guns coming through, and I think this is not a shock to Canberra because they obviously made the decision last year to extend Ricky by 5 years. And I think it's because they sat down and they went, we're going through that rebuild phase and we want Ricky to bring these guys through. So the position they're in, I don't think it's a shock to them. Obviously, Ricky's very competitive and they'll go out there and give it all they've got this year. But injury is going to be their biggest concern this year because I don't think they've got the depth in the forwards.
Yeah, absolutely. I think if they can stay 100% fit, they'll do slightly better than what people think, but we'll talk a little bit on that later. And that was our predicted lineup. Now, I'm going to run through a quick Supercoach for you, Supercoach and fantasy fans. I'm going to go through some players that I think are very relevant for this season to jump on or don't. You don't have to listen to me. I don't really actually know that much. But if I jump into the Canberra players here on Supercoach, of course, Hudson Young at $685K. He's the most expensive Raider. Play him in the second row. Look, he's a fantastic option to have. If you put him in your team, I'm not going to say no. He's a great option. I think there are cheaper second rows to start your season with, and don't forget he will play Origin as well. So he's one probably not a season long keeper, but maybe one for the run home. Joseph Tarpany at 655k front row, again fantastic option. Won't play Origin. So you got him in the front row. He will do he'll do wonders there if he has the C next to his name again, which we assume he will. Uh, that's another thing that just boosts him. He gets a lot of points when he has the captain's armband. He just seems to go to a new level. So at 655k, not a bad option there for Joseph Tarpany. Jamal Fogarty, interesting one, 535k at halfback. You've obviously got your Clearys and your Hines that are your premium halfback options, and a lot of people going Luke Metcalf from the Warriors. But I think a lot of people are sleeping on Jamal Fogarty. Not very well owned at the moment. Could be a bit of a pod option if you wanted to go down that route. We'll get the goal kicking as well, so added points for your Supercoach team. We moved down a little bit. Now, last season we saw Ethan Strange and KO Weeks were very Supercoach relevant. Ethan Strange, 484k. He's a bit too pricey for me to play in my 5'8". KO Week has the fullback 5'8" dual, and he's 530k. So bit juicy there with the dual aspect, but I don't see them getting many points in Supercoach this year. If we move down a bit more, I'm going to go into some cheapies now. Corey Horsburgh, second row, front row dual, so you can play him in your second row or your front row, 355k. And if he's going to have the season that Craig and I are both predicting, he is one to get into your Supercoach. Get him in. He is going to get you some really good points. Of course, may play Origin, so just swap him out during that period. But I think he could be really one to keep an eye on. Matty Nicholson as well, come over from the Super League. We know the Raiders love their English imports. 336k in the second row. If he does land the starting spot, it's very, very juicy odds. And if we go down a bit further, man, I want to talk about Savelio Tamale. Now, I mentioned him before. I think he'll land a wing spot. He's at 232k in Supercoach, which is cheap as chips. Now, you can play him in the centre wing position. If he does get a starting role, I'm throwing him in. He will gain you cash. He will make an increase of 200, 300k, in my opinion. He's definitely one to look out for. And the other guy is Owen Paddy, who we spoke on before. 198k in Supercoach. Hooker, if he does get a starting role or even a bench spot, I would be happy to bring him in. He's going to make you cash, maybe a slow burn, but will make you some cash there. Now, of course, that is our players for the Raiders for Supercoach relevance there. Don't forget we have a Supercoach and NRL Fantasy comp running. You can check out our league codes in the description. Of course, some Supercoach and Fantasy Championship rings up for grabs for the winner. So jump in on that and check it out. All right, Craig, let's talk the Raiders. Now, we're going to talk about their season, where we think they'll go, where we think they may end up. Look, last year they defied expectations. I actually had them getting the spoon in 2024. I thought the loss of Jack White, as we spoke on, the experience was just going to damage them. But Ricky managed to, I don't know how he does it, but he pulled something out of you-know-where, and they almost made the top eight. Or they did make the top eight? They almost made the top eight. I think they were just...
Almost made it, yeah. I think it was actually for and against.
Yeah. And... a fantastic season in the eyes of those critics and the Raiders faithful. But, mate, where do you see this season going? Do you think it's going to go down the same lines, or do you think it's just too much experience gone now?
That's my concern, is the experience. I think they'll miss Jack White more this season than they did last year because losing Rapinoe, losing Elliot Whitehead. I don't have them in the 8, unfortunately. I think the Raiders are always a team that are floating around that 8th position. They're around that 8th to 10th position going towards the end of the season. I think we've got to remember it's been a while now since 2019, and I do think they're going through a rebuild phase, which is why they've extended Ricky for 5 years. So to get them through that and hopefully back up where we want to see them. So for me, mate, I've got them around that 10th position.
Yeah, very nice. For me, I've got a mower. I've actually dropped them into my bottom 4. So I've got them about 15th. I just am very worried. We've also got to talk about second-year syndrome. Ethan Strange, it's his second proper year in the NRL this season. We know players don't tend to do well in their second year with the second-year syndrome. And KO Weeks as well, his first full season last year, of course, played for Manly before that. But I think both of those boys may struggle, and if they don't get the ball that's required, I mean, what do you do? The good thing is, as we said before, there's a lot of halves coming through. Adam Cook, Ethan Sanders. So if anything does happen to Strange, one of those boys will replace them. But I just I hope I get egg on my face 2 years in a row. I really do. But I'm gonna have the Raiders down the bottom in my bottom four. I've got them about 15th. I just can't see it, unfortunately. And I'm not giving anyone my address, so don't come find me.
Well, I think a lot of it comes down to Fogarty, and what people need to remember
Mm,
is he was out for a big chunk last year,
that's
and they
right.
still managed to get through and just grind their way through it. So I think a lot of it comes down to Fogarty. I know that he's got something in his contract, or they've got something in his contract that by round six the Raiders can decide if they want to extend him or let him
Mm,
test the open market. I think that's a strange clause in a contract for both parties. It'll be interesting to see if it brings the best out of Fogarty, and if it does he extend? Does he want to test the market? I think they should put the trust into him and extend him at least for another 12 months or so. But obviously, he probably wants more than that. But the first 5, 6 rounds will be very interesting to see how they go or how Fogarty performs.
yeah, absolutely. We spoke on Josh Papali earlier. Now, Papali, he's not getting any younger. He's had a fantastic career to date. What he's done has been incredible. But do you worry that age may catch up on him this season?
Absolutely. I love Big Papa. He's my anytime try scorer in any Raiders game that I'm watching. That will continue out of loyalty, but age catches up with everyone. He does a lot of minutes. He's
Yeah.
done the hard work, and yeah, I hope the Raiders have a successful year for him because he's put everything into that jumper.
Yeah, for sure. If it is the final season, look, he'll be remembered for so many great things. Scoring a try for Queensland in Origin a couple of seasons ago, I think it was 2017. Won some people lots of money who had him on in that game. Not me, but Luke will tell you he had him on. But yeah, look, he's had a stellar career. Look, he may go around again, but I think this could be the final curtain call for Josh Papali. Joseph Tarpany, fantastic player. He'll give his all as he does every season. And that man you mentioned before, Big Red, I'm very excited to see the redemption of Big Red. Very excited to see him silence the critics because I thought he was pretty hard done by last year by the club. I didn't think he played that bad in 2023. I thought he was one of their best players, actually. And to not really get much of a go in 24 surprised me.
I think it was down to his discipline, to be honest.
Mm,
You know, not saying he struggled becoming a full time footballer, professional footballer, but
yeah,
whatever's happened last year, I think will bring the best out of him for this year, which will only benefit the club itself. He was very close to going. He was very close to apparently signing with the Tigers. So
yeah, wow.
to be staying where he is, I think big things will happen, and I think the person that will influence the most will be Hudson Young. I
Mm,
think he struggled a little bit there last year, but I think if Big Red and Papa and Tapano can have a good year and let Hudson Young float around, let him chase those
yeah.
grubby kicks and be a bit more of a ball running second rower, I think will be good.
Yeah, absolutely, mate. I completely agree. So Craig's got them 10th. I've got them 15th. That is our prediction for the Canberra Raiders in 2025. Now, before we finish up, we're going to do a dynamite player, a player that we think may explode in 2025. They can be a new player. They can be a player who's been there for 10 plus years. But, mate, do you have a player who you think's going to explode this season?
I think it's Savage, Xavier Savage. I think he
Nice.
will have a really good year this year, and I think he will be the one to stand out for him.
Yeah, mate, I love it. It's a great shout. He's been obviously touted the past few years. A lot of talk on Savage and the game he's got and when's he going to take it to the next level. I think you could be right. I think it's a fantastic shout that this could be Savage's year. For me, mate, I'm going forward pack, of course, but I'm actually going to go Zach Hosking. I think if Hosking is fit and firing, I love Zach Hosking. I think he is a fantastic player. If they can get the most out of that right edge for Hosking, I think he will go to new heights, new levels this season, and he'll have a fantastic year. It doesn't matter where the Raiders finish. I still think he can personally have a really good year. Look, I'd love to see him, you know, obviously play representative football. I think that's a while down the track for him, if ever. But I really like what I see from Hosking, and I think he's going to be the dynamite player in 2025. But that is it for our Canberra Raiders team preview. Don't forget to check us out on all social media, Facebook, Instagram, TikTok, and X. Also on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, and now on YouTube as well. If you are watching on YouTube, repping the Australian jersey today from the 90s, mate. Fantastic jersey. Look, absolutely love the colours. I tried to get green for the Raiders, but this is the only green that I had. But speaking of jerseys, don't forget you can go to JerseyKingzAustralia.com. They're doing rugby league jerseys for 2025, of course, AFL, soccer, and of course, basketball jerseys as well. Now, they're selling jerseys for $150. If you use our code RUCK, you get $50 off. You're getting jerseys for $100, which is an absolute steal, but don't go and steal. Use our code RUCK, $100 jersey. Fantastic. So go to JerseyKingzAustralia.com. Check them out on Instagram as well. Of course, head over to Stay Fancy Eyewear, the best safety glasses going around. They look good, and you can wear them on the work site as well. They protect you from the sun, but they're very, very nice suns. Come in a range of colors and variety. And if you use our code RUCK10, you'll get 10% off. So check out Stay Fancy Eyewear on Facebook and Instagram today. But until next time, that's Craig. I'm Joey. Be good.